An alliance with a powerful actor is never safe. Russia and China may no longer share a common philosophy, but the invisible hand of geopolitics is driving the two together nonetheless. Vladimir Putin and Xi Jinping are playing a game of brinkmanship that has the scale to topple the American unipolarity. According to the Worldwide Threat Assessment in 2019, Russia and China are more aligned at any point since the mid-1950s. Commercial ties have strengthened significantly, and there is growing talk of military cooperation, with some officials hinting at an official military pact. But how feasible is the China-Russia alliance? Can it last? And if so, who would make for the senior partner? I'm your host Shirvan, and welcome to Caspian Report. Today's episode is sponsored by CuriosityStream, a streaming service that offers thousands of documentaries spanning politics, history, technology, society, and so on. Some of my favorites include The Spying Game and Stalin Trotsky. These titles and many more have helped expand my base of knowledge. Now, CuriosityStream is available worldwide and on multiple platforms. You can get unlimited access starting just $2.99 a month or $19.99 a year. That's a bargain. If you want to test things out, you can. There is a 30-day free trial available. Just go to curiositystream.com/Caspian and use the promo code Caspian, all one word lowercase, during the sign-up process. The definition of an alliance can be construed in many ways. The classical explanation is the balance of power theory, which describes an alliance as a mutual expectation between multiple states that they will have each other's support in disputes or armed conflicts. An alliance is formed when two or more states share a common adversary and are incapable of increasing their power independently. So they combine their resources to survive. For Russia and China, that common adversary is the United States. After 3 decades of unopposed American dominance, the Russians and the Chinese have come to feel increasingly anxious. By their own actions, with Russia focusing around Eastern Europe and the Middle East, and China moving deeper into the Asia-Pacific battlespace, they've placed themselves in the crosshairs of the Pentagon. Taken separately, the Chinese and the Russians would struggle to prevail against the United States and its vast network of allies. But together, Moscow and Beijing would dominate much of Eurasia, as imagined by the Heartland theory that characterized the Cold War. An alliance between China and Russia, where the economic influence of the former is combined with the diplomatic and military weight of the latter, would produce a pact that would rival the West for global supremacy. The two complement each other's strengths. Russia is an enormous land power with large volumes of natural resources, notably hydrocarbons. It also has the world's largest nuclear weapons arsenal, as well as a high-tech military industry. The Russian population, however, is modest in comparison with its terrestrial size. Meanwhile, China is an economic powerhouse with a massive population that can rival the markets in the West. It also has many valuable deep-water ports and a blue water navy that is increasingly capable. That said, the Chinese military remains conventional by current metrics. Seen from this angle, the two nations reinforce each other's strengths, but they also have much in common in terms of geopolitical interests. Both seek for a multipolar world where the distribution of power is more even. Both have antagonistic attitudes to the West, and both hold a grudge to American hegemony. What Moscow and Beijing want more than anything else is greater say in global affairs, and in recent years, the two have come together as allies in pursuit of that mission. For China, 2020 was a year of increasingly hostile rhetoric from the United States. Think of the trade war, the persecution of minorities, the new security laws in Hong Kong, as well as the use of Huawei in 5G infrastructure. All these developments ratcheted up apprehensions. On the Russian front, American and European sanctions have hurt the macroeconomy badly, so much so that the Russians have gone out their way to search for alternative markets. More pressingly, since 2019, much of the trade between China and Russia has not been transacted in US dollars, but in local currencies, a sign that the two want to move away from the dollar as the global reserve currency. But the pact between China and Russia goes beyond economics. At its core, the relationship is a personal one. After being inaugurated for his third term in 2012, China was the first country Putin visited. A year later, Xi returned the compliment when he assumed the office of the presidency. Putin and Xi have met about 30 times throughout their political professions, and they've become increasingly flattering of each other. Putin refers to Xi as his dear friend and his longtime friend, while Xi describes Putin as his best and bosom friend. Although the COVID-19 pandemic has slowed things down, the two have still met on several occasions. Now, this reciprocal endorsement may seem peculiar, but it ensures a robust relationship at the leadership level. In December 2020, a poll conducted by China's Global Times showed that more than half of the Chinese view Russia as the most important country in foreign policy, while an earlier poll by the US-based Pew Research Center in December 2019 showed that 71% of Russians hold favorable opinions of China, the highest ratio in the world. Clearly, with the public and the political elite on the same page, there is plenty of room to expand relations. It is that confidence that allowed for cooperation into the military sphere. In 2018, during Russia's large-scale Vostok exercise, China provided 3,200 of the 300,000 troops involved. It was an impressive display of brute force alongside the Sea of Japan, and it served as a preview of the power of the Chinese-Russian pact. So, why hasn't an alliance already happened? What's keeping Moscow and Beijing from signing a binding treaty? The answer is in the striking disparities between the two. Although military pairs, at the moment, Russia's military spending has fallen well behind. Take the annual budget of 2017 as an example. While China made the largest absolute increase in military spending globally, Russia went into the opposite direction and made the largest decrease. Military spending-wise, China dwarfs Russia by more than $52 billion. At the same time, Chinese scientists are reverse engineering high-tech Russian weaponry at an astonishing rate. In some military domains, China has even surpassed their Russian counterparts. It is clear that in time, the Russian military will subordinate to China. Looking past the military dimension, the Russian GDP stands at $1.6 trillion per 2018, while the Chinese GDP hits above $13.6 trillion. That's 8 times the size and growing. In terms of trade, China and Russia seek to double trade to $200 billion by 2024. As significant as that sounds, it still represents less than a third of China's trade with the United States. So the bilateral partnership is more important for Russia than it is for China. Considering the military and economic disparities, a binding security treaty between China and Russia would render Beijing as the senior partner. Serving in the backseat of an alliance is not what policymakers in Moscow mean when they talk about restoring a multipolar global order. Seen in this light, a Russian-Chinese alliance is more trouble than it's worth, and the previously mentioned disparities are only the beginning. Another striking inconsistency are the demographics. The Russian Far East is vastly underpopulated, especially compared to the more populous and prosperous Chinese border area. Currently, an estimated 300,000 to 500,000 ethnic Chinese populate Russia's Far East, a number that is steadily growing. By some estimates, if the current migration continues unabated, ethnic Chinese will become the majority in the Russian Far East by 2030. Both the Russians and the Chinese have invoked historical narratives to justify their geopolitical ambitions. So, while Russians claim Crimea on historical grounds, Chinese nationalists recall that the Russian Far East, including the city of Vladivostok, was forcefully seized from China in the mid-19th century. These policy narratives are not only incompatible, but inflammatory. Imagine that in a Chinese-Russian alliance, with Beijing serving as the senior partner and with an ethnic Chinese majority in the Russian Far East, there may yet come a time when Beijing asks Moscow to relinquish or concede some of its assets or territories. As the junior partner in that binding treaty, Russia would not have the right or even the capacity to refuse. It stands to reason that a backseat in an alliance is a dangerous, unpredictable long-term commitment, and therefore not acceptable to the Russian leadership. The more one unpacks the supposed alliance, the more it's revealed that China and Russia are in fact geopolitical adversaries. That rivalry is particularly noticeable in Central Asia, where Russia retains the Soviet legacy of political leadership. President Xi has thus far handled the Chinese influence in Central Asia with great sensitivity, but his flagship project, the Belt and Road Initiative, is blatantly encroaching on Putin's proposed Eurasian Economic Union, which is another display of incompatibility. The lack of a shared cultural background or ideology further invalidates the supposed alliance. Both countries consider themselves as civilization states and frame their domestic and foreign policy according to the civilizational identity. In terms of cultural kinship, there are 14 times as many Chinese students attending universities in the United States than attending Russian universities. The Chinese just do not look up to the Russians for cultural inspiration. So, considering the growing economic, military, demographic, and cultural disparities, Russia will sooner see China as an enemy than as an ally. The cordial relationship that exists between Moscow and Beijing will eventually reach its expiration date. A possible flashpoint in this context would be the Arctic, a region that holds high economic potential and is undergoing radical change. We talked about this in a previous report. Russia has a legal claim over vast Arctic territorial waters, and approximately 1/5 of its territory is north of the Arctic Circle. In the last 6 years, Russia has been more assertive about its claim, actively stepping up its Arctic military presence by reopening Soviet bases, holding military exercises, etc. China has long-term interests in the Arctic as well, and it has been beefing up its diplomatic activity to establish a foothold in the region. Having said that, the Arctic is the one place where the Russians are clearly the dominant power and will not yield easily. Intransigence in Arctic policymaking could result in a meltdown of relations. By mid-century, at the time of the Arctic's opening, Russia will be significantly weaker elsewhere. It will lack the economic and demographic capacity to compete with China or the United States, and since it cannot keep up, Moscow may instead prefer to balance between the two. Relations with China would have to be downgraded, while ties with America would need to be restored. This then explains why Russia wants to keep its options open. It's a long-term policy, because some allies are more dangerous than enemies. I've been your host Shirvan from CaspianReport. If you enjoy our content, please leave a like, comment, and subscribe. That's the only way we can get through the algorithm. Thank you for watching, and Sol.